I never imagined I would be dragged to court by someone I once loved. 5 years with Jessica had ended messily, but what came next was beyond anything I could have anticipated. When she filed that lawsuit against me, she had no idea she was setting herself up for a spectacular fall. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge is simply following the rules to the letter, especially when those rules end up destroying the person who tried to use them against you. Before I share how my ex's greed became her undoing, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you enjoy stories of justice served cold. I come from a modest background in the suburbs of Chicago. My parents were hardworking people who instilled in me the value of self-reliance. College wasn't in the cards for me financially, but computers had always been my passion, so I taught myself programming through online courses and free resources. By the time I turned 27, I had secured a decent job as a junior developer at a mid-sized tech firm. That was around the time I met Jessica at my colleague Daniel's housewarming party. She stood out immediately with her confident posture and infectious laugh. Jessica worked as a marketing executive at one of those prestigious firms with a name made up of 3 important-sounding surnames. She had the kind of polished background I lacked: a private university education, well-connected parents, and that effortless social grace that comes from growing up with money. Despite our different worlds, we clicked instantly. Our conversation that night flowed from tech trends to obscure documentaries to our shared love of spicy Thai food. She gave me her number without me even having to ask, and by the end of our first official date at a little jazz club downtown, I was already falling hard. Our relationship moved quickly after that. Jessica was ambitious, sharp, and brought an exciting energy into my rather structured life. She encouraged me to speak up more at work and helped me improve my wardrobe beyond the standard programmer uniform of hoodies and jeans. I introduced her to the simple pleasures I grew up with: weekend hikes, home-cooked meals, and movie marathons on the couch. After a year of dating, I suggested she move into my apartment. It wasn't fancy, a 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor of an older building with temperamental plumbing and thin walls. But it was in a decent neighborhood, and the rent was reasonable. Jessica agreed, though I could tell she saw it as a temporary situation. The first few months of living together were blissful, but subtle tensions began to emerge. Jessica would make casual comments about upgrading to a real apartment, or point out listings in upscale neighborhoods that were well beyond my budget. I understood her desire for a nicer place, but my salary could only stretch so far. That's when I decided to start a side business developing custom software. I had noticed a gap in the market for specialized inventory management systems for small retailers, something more affordable than the enterprise solutions, but more robust than generic software. I believed I could build something valuable in this niche. The early days of my business venture meant long nights at my desk, coding after my day job while Jessica watched TV or scrolled through social media. Initially, she was supportive, bringing me coffee and listening to my excited ramblings about database structures and user interfaces. She even helped me brainstorm names for the company, eventually settling on Apex Solutions. My first client was a local bookstore owner who needed a better way to track his inventory and sales. The payment wasn't much, but seeing my software actually helping a real business gave me an incredible rush. I reinvested every penny back into the business, buying better development tools and upgrading my equipment. As more clients came in through word of mouth, Jessica's attitude began to shift. What had started as supportive curiosity turned into impatience and then resentment. "You're always working" became her common refrain. The truth was, I was excited about building something from scratch, creating value with nothing but my skills and determination. When my business bank account hit 5 figures, Jessica suddenly took a renewed interest. She started suggesting that she should have an official role in the company. I could handle the marketing side, she would say. With my connections, we could really grow this thing. I appreciated her enthusiasm, but there was something about it that felt off. Jessica had never shown much interest in the technical aspects of what I was building. Her suggestions always centered around how we could expand quickly and maximize profits, rather than how we could create the best product for our clients. I made what seemed like a reasonable decision at the time. I told Jessica I wanted to keep the business separate from our relationship, at least until it was more established. "Business partnerships can get complicated," I explained. "Let's not risk what we have together." She didn't take it well. What followed were weeks of tense conversations and passive-aggressive comments. Jessica started tracking the hours I spent working versus the hours I spent with her. She began questioning every business expense, especially when I invested in expensive development software instead of the vacation she had been hinting about. The truth was, our values had begun to diverge. I was building something I was proud of, focusing on long-term growth and client satisfaction. Jessica seemed more interested in the lifestyle she thought my business could provide immediately. The loving relationship we once had was gradually being replaced by transactional thinking and keeping score. The final breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday evening. I had just secured my biggest client, yet a regional retail chain that wanted to implement my inventory system across their 15 locations. It would mean a significant payday, but also months of intense work and customization. When I shared the news with Jessica, her first question wasn't about the achievement or the technical challenge. Instead, she asked, "So can we finally move to that building in Lincoln Park now? I need to reinvest most of this money into scaling the business," I explained. "I might need to hire some help to meet the deadlines." Jessica's expression hardened. "You know what? I've been helping you build this business for over a year now. I've supported you, given you marketing advice, even helped you prepare for client meetings. I think it's time you added me to the business accounts." I was taken aback. "That's not how business works, Jess. You've been supportive, and I appreciate that, but you haven't been building the product or working with clients. So, my contributions mean nothing." Her voice rose sharply. "Without me, you'd still be sitting in this dump, coding your little projects that go nowhere." The argument escalated from there. Jessica delivered an ultimatum: make her a partner with access to the business accounts, or she was leaving. It was one of the hardest decisions of my life, but I stood my ground. By morning, she had packed her bags. I didn't realize at first that she had taken more than just her belongings. 2 days later, while preparing to work on the new client project, I discovered my backup hard drive was missing, the one containing proprietary code and client data. At first, I thought I'd misplaced it, but after turning the apartment upside down, the truth became clear. Jessica had taken it. I sent her increasingly urgent messages over the next few days. "Please return the hard drive. It has important client data on it." No response. "Jessica, this is serious. That drive contains proprietary information." Still nothing. "I'm not angry, I just need the drive back. It's my livelihood." Her silence was deafening. Meanwhile, I was struggling to reconstruct work and meet deadlines. I had some backups, but not everything. Clients were getting concerned about delays, and I was beginning to panic. 3 weeks after our breakup, I finally heard from Jessica, not directly but through a lawyer. The email was formal and cold, claiming that Jessica had contributed sweat equity to Apex Solutions and was entitled to 40% ownership. The lawyer demanded a meeting to discuss terms of partnership recognition. I nearly fell out of my chair reading it. 40%. For occasionally offering marketing suggestions and bringing me coffee. It was absurd. But the threat of legal action was very real, and I knew lawyers weren't cheap. Fortunately, I had a college friend, Marcus, who had become an attorney. I couldn't afford his normal rates, but he agreed to consult with me at a reduced fee as a favor. After reviewing the demand letter, Marcus laughed. "This is mostly bluffing," he explained. "Without a written agreement or proof of actual contribution to the intellectual property, her claim is weak. But that doesn't mean she can't make this painful for you." Marcus was right. Over the following weeks, Jessica escalated her campaign. She began posting vague but damaging comments on social media about unethical business partners and stolen ideas. She contacted several of my clients, introducing herself as my business partner and creating confusion. Then came the official lawsuit. The filing was extensive, claiming Jessica had provided invaluable business strategy, critical marketing direction, and essential client relations management to Apex Solutions. According to her lawsuit, she had been promised part ownership from the beginning and had worked under that assumption. It was all fabricated, but fighting it would be expensive and time-consuming. I was already struggling to keep up with client work due to the missing code and data. The stress was affecting my health. I lost weight, had trouble sleeping, and my focus suffered. The situation took an even more sinister turn when Marcus discovered through a mutual connection that Jessica had started dating a developer who worked for a competing software company. Suddenly, her theft of my hard drive took on new meaning. She wasn't just being spiteful, she might be planning to share my proprietary code. Marcus immediately filed for an emergency hearing, requesting the court order Jessica to return all business-related materials. The judge granted our request, and Jessica was legally required to return my property within 48 hours. When the hard drive finally came back, my heart sank. It had obvious physical damage, and many of the files were corrupted. It wasn't an accident. Someone had deliberately attempted to damage the data while still technically complying with the court order. I managed to recover some work from cloud backups, but significant portions of my most recent development were lost forever. I spent several sleepless nights rewriting code from memory and trying to reconstruct client customizations. What Jessica didn't know was that her actions had transformed me. My initial shock and hurt had hardened into determination. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to make sure she faced consequences for what she'd done. Marcus and I sat in his modest office, surrounded by legal textbooks and the lingering smell of coffee. The windows showed a gray Chicago sky threatening rain. Perfect weather for plotting a comeback. "Here's what we're going to do," Marcus said, leaning forward. "She wants to be recognized as your business partner. Let's show her exactly what that would mean legally." The strategy was brilliant in its simplicity, malicious compliance. We would give Jessica exactly what she claimed to want, but in a way that would make her regret ever filing the lawsuit. First, I created comprehensive documentation of every business expense and hour worked since Apex Solutions began. I meticulously recovered every email, text message, and calendar entry related to the business. I compiled a spreadsheet showing the hundreds of late nights and weekends I had worked while Jessica was out with friends or watching reality TV. We filed a countersuit for business damages and stolen property, including detailed estimates of the cost of reconstructing the corrupted code and the value of delayed contracts. I reached out to every client I had ever worked with, requesting statements about their interactions with the company, specifically asking if they had ever worked with or even heard of Jessica in a professional capacity. During the discovery process, we uncovered something I hadn't expected. Jessica had shared some of my code with her new boyfriend. We found email exchanges where she had sent him specific files from my hard drive with messages like, "See if you can use any of this," and "Is this valuable?" This was no longer just about a messy breakup and a frivolous lawsuit. This was industrial espionage. When Marcus presented this evidence to the court, the judge's expression darkened. Jessica's lawyer, a slick corporate type who had probably expected an easy settlement from a small-time developer, suddenly looked very uncomfortable. As part of our compliance with the legal process, we submitted detailed financial records for the business, something Jessica had demanded access to. These records showed something that seemed to surprise her. Despite growing revenue, the business had actually operated at a loss for most of its existence. I had been reinvesting every dollar, and even taking on personal debt to fund growth. The tax records we submitted proved Jessica had never reported any income from the business on her taxes, something she would have been required to do if she were truly a partner. We also uncovered a hidden bank account Jessica had opened around the time of our breakup with several suspicious deposits that coincided with meetings her new boyfriend had with one of my potential clients. The real turning point came when two of my clients decided to join the lawsuit after learning their proprietary information had been compromised. They were furious that custom solutions I had developed for their specific business needs might have been shared with competitors. Throughout the proceedings, Jessica's testimony kept changing. First, she claimed we had a verbal agreement about partnership. Then, when confronted with contradictory evidence, she claimed I had added her name to business documents that were later altered. When we produced the original documents, her story changed again. Eventually, her lawyer withdrew from the case, citing communication issues with the client. Jessica decided to represent herself, which any lawyer will tell you is almost always a mistake. She began making critical legal errors, confusing deadlines, submitting improper documents, and making emotional arguments instead of legal ones. Despite the intense stress and anger I felt, I maintained a professional demeanor throughout the process. I answered questions directly and factually, provided all requested documentation promptly, and never once let my emotions get the better of me in court. Jessica, on the other hand, became increasingly agitated and combative, even arguing with the judge on several occasions. As our court date approached, Jessica seemed to realize she was in serious trouble. She made a settlement offer that would have dropped her claims in exchange for me dropping the countersuit. Marcus advised me against it. "She tried to destroy your business," he reminded me. "Let the court decide." The night before our final court date, I barely slept. Not from anxiety, but from a strange, calm certainty. I had built my business from nothing through hard work and determination. I had documentation of every step, every decision, every line of code. Jessica had nothing but fabricated claims and shifting stories. For once in my life, doing the right thing all along was about to pay off. The courtroom felt smaller than I expected, with its dark wood paneling and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. Jessica sat across the aisle wearing a conservative blue dress that seemed calculated to project responsibility. She avoided eye contact. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s with short gray hair and piercing eyes, had clearly reviewed the case thoroughly. She began the proceedings by summarizing the claims and counterclaims, then looked directly at Jessica. What followed was one of the most scathing legal assessments I've ever witnessed. The judge methodically dismantled every aspect of Jessica's claim, citing the lack of documentary evidence, the inconsistent testimony, and the clear evidence of bad faith actions. Miss Reynolds, the judge said, using Jessica's last name, the court finds your claim of partnership not only unsubstantiated, but deliberately misleading. The evidence suggests you attempted to appropriate business assets and proprietary information for personal gain, then filed this lawsuit as a preemptive measure when confronted with your actions. The judge's ruling was comprehensive. Jessica's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice, meaning she could not file again on the same grounds. My counterclaim was upheld in full, with Jessica ordered to pay my legal fees, business damages for the corrupted data, and additional penalties for the misappropriation of intellectual property. The final judgment came to just over $175,000. I watched as the color drained from Jessica's face when the amount was announced. Her new boyfriend, who had been sitting in the back of the courtroom, quietly slipped out before the proceedings ended. Outside the courthouse, Marcus shook my hand. Congratulations. That went even better than we expected. I felt strangely hollow. Winning was satisfying, but the whole experience had been emotionally draining. What happens now? I asked. She'll probably try to appeal, but it won't go anywhere, Marcus explained. As for the money, we can file liens against her property and garnish wages if necessary. She won't be able to escape this. Within a week, I heard through mutual friends that Jessica had lost her marketing job. Apparently, her employer had been concerned about the lawsuit and the accusations of corporate espionage. Her reputation in our industry was in tatters. A month later, I received an unexpected email from Jessica. Unlike her previous communications, this one was personal, not legal. She wrote that she regretted her actions and was struggling financially because of the judgment. She suggested we work something out and hinted at rekindling our relationship. I composed a brief, polite response. Jessica, I wish you well in rebuilding your life, but our relationship is over. As for the judgment, I expect compliance with the court's decision. Stewart. In the 6 months that followed, I refocused on my business. With the lawsuit behind me, clients became more confident in working with Apex Solutions. I hired 2 junior developers to help with the workload and moved into a proper office space. The business was finally thriving. Then came the notice Jessica had filed for bankruptcy protection, listing the judgment against her as the primary debt. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part felt unexpectedly sad. I later learned she had lost her apartment and moved back in with her parents in Michigan. After receiving a partial payment through the bankruptcy process, I made a personal decision. I filed paperwork to forgive the remaining debt, not for Jessica's sake, but for my own peace of mind. I wanted to close this chapter completely and move forward without the weight of resentment. The experience taught me valuable lessons about protecting myself legally. I now use formal agreements for all business relationships, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. I've implemented better security measures for my intellectual property and maintain multiple backups in secure locations. About a year after the lawsuit, I met Allison at a tech conference. She was a lawyer specializing in intellectual property, with a refreshing straightforwardness and genuine interest in the technical aspects of my work. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and clear boundaries. With Allison's legal guidance and my growing technical team, Apex Solutions expanded beyond my wildest expectations. 2 years after the lawsuit, my company became an acquisition target for a major tech firm. The sale provided the kind of financial security I could never have imagined when I was coding alone in my tiny apartment. Looking back, Jessica's lawsuit, as painful as it was at the time, forced me to formalize and improve my business practices. Her attempt to take what wasn't hers ultimately led me to build something far more valuable than what she had tried to steal. I sometimes wonder if Jessica knows how her attempted money grab backfired so spectacularly. Her greed and dishonesty cost her everything: her relationship, her job, her reputation, and her financial stability. Meanwhile, by simply following the rules and standing up for what was right, I gained everything I never knew I wanted. Have you ever had someone's attempt to hurt you backfire on them? Share your story in the comments below. I read every comment and would love to hear how you handled a similar situation. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that standing your ground can lead to unexpected victories. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is building a better life.